Do you like my little lamb? Of course, he's just a puppet. But he reminds me of a story that I read in the news a few years ago about a lamb that needed to be rescued. The little lamb was grazing with his flock. They were just nibbling on grass on the side of a hill. Well, the little lamb came upon some grass that tasted really good. It was called sweet grass. And so he just kept nibbling and wandering off to where the sweet grass was until he got away from the flock without even realizing it. The bad part was that he had wandered down a hillside following where that sweet grass was. It wasn't so hard to get down the hill, but he realized he was having trouble getting back up. You see, the area was surrounded by steep cliffs on each side. And so although he could get down, he couldn't get up. And that little lamb tried and tried to climb up. He tried this way, he tried that way, but he couldn't get out of that area. He was in a dangerous place. Well, the shepherd saw him down there. But the shepherd didn't rappel down right away and rescue the lamb. Instead, the shepherd watched. He watched that lamb strive to get out. He watched him struggle and struggle. That lamb tried every way possible to get out, but he couldn't do it. He struggled all night long. He was getting tired and hungry, and the shepherd just watched. Finally, after struggling all night, the lamb realized he just couldn't do it. He laid down. His strength was gone. He just couldn't fight it anymore. And that's when the shepherd rappelled down the hillside. He took a rope, tied it around the lamb, held him tight, and pulled him to safety. Later, someone asked the shepherd, "Why didn't you go down right away when you knew the lamb was in trouble?" The shepherd said, "Well, the lamb was striving, he was struggling, he was fighting to get out. And I knew that if I went down there at that time, he would have panicked, he would have fought against me, and he may have ended up falling off the cliff and not surviving. So I waited. I waited until the lamb used all his strength and all of his plans to get out until he finally gave up. And that's when I knew that I could go down and rescue him, because I was the one that could save him." You know, when I read that story, it reminded me of something that happened to Jacob. Because in the Bible, we learn that something similar happened to him. We've been studying about Jacob's life, and we know that he has left Haran. He has taken all of his wives and his children and his flocks, and he's on his way back to Canaan because God told him it's time to come home. Let's pick up our lesson, our story today, in chapter 32 of Genesis. So follow along with me with your finger. And what we start to find out is that Jacob entered Canaan, but he was afraid that Esau would come and kill him. Remember, 20 years earlier, Esau said, "I'm going to kill that Jacob." So Jacob's wondering, is he still that angry? Is he still going to come and kill me? Well, Jacob comes up with a plan. Several plans, in fact. Plan number 1 starts in verse 3. So let's read about it. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau. And he told the messengers, "Go tell my brother that I have a lot of animals now. I've been working. I have a lot of animals." Maybe he was telling him, "You don't have to worry. I'm not going to try to take all your stuff. I don't know. But he wanted to assure his brother, I'm a rich man now. Well, when the messengers returned, here's what they said in verse 6. Read along with me. When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, we went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you and 400 men with him. 400 men? Well, that must mean that he was coming to fight. Jacob was afraid. So he comes up with plan number 2. And that's found in verse 7. In great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into 2 groups, and the flocks too. Because he thought, well, if Esau attacks me and he attacks one of the flocks, one group, then surely the other group can escape. That was plan number 2. Plan number 3 comes in verse 9. And that's when Jacob decided he would pray to God. O God, Father of Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O God, who told me to come home, to go back to Canaan, he said, please help me. He says, I know I don't really deserve it. I know that you're a God of kindness and love, but God, please rescue me. Look in verse 11. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me and the wives and the children also. God, you promised that you would make my family great as the sands in the sea. Please save me. Well, then Jacob has plan number 4. Look in verse 13. He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau. Now, if you're going to send a gift that's good enough to try to get your brother not to kill you, it better be a big, good gift, right? Well, remember, Jacob didn't really have a lot of money, but he had a lot of animals. So let's read what he decided to send as a present, a gift to Esau. As we read, maybe you math students out there can figure out how many animals did Jacob send to Esau. We'll be reading in verses 14 and 15. So as we read, you can just write down the numbers or think of it in your head and see if you can figure out how many animals did Jacob send to Esau. Well, he sent 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes, female sheep, and 20 rams, 30 female camels and their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. Add it up. Let me know what you get. It's a lot of animals, believe me. So text me or email me or private message me. Let me know, and I'll tell you what I got. But it was a lot of animals. So that was plan number 4. Well, plan number 5 comes next. In verse 22, that night, Jacob got up and took his wives, his maidservants, his children, and he sent them across the Jabbok River. Now, here's a modern-day picture of the Jabbok River. It's not a really big river. In fact, where Jacob was, it was more like a stream. So he sent his family and his animals across. Maybe he was thinking that if Esau and his men come, that at least it would slow them down to have to cross the river and then march up those hills. Whatever the case, that was plan number 5. Send his family and his animals across the river. Well, after he does that, we learn about God's plan to help Jacob. And that's in verse 23. 4. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. A man? Jacob was out there alone. Who was this guy? Maybe he thought it was Esau at first. Wouldn't take long. If you're wrestling with hairy old Esau, it wouldn't take long to recognize him. Jacob knew it wasn't Esau. But the Bible just calls him a man. And as we read along and study about it, we'll realize that this was a man sent from God. We might call him an angel, sent from God to wrestle with Jacob. And the Bible says that they wrestled all night long until daybreak. But Jacob would not give up. Now, you may have wrestled before. Wrestling isn't boxing. It's not fighting that way, but it's holding on to each other. It's trying to get each other maybe in a headlock, or maybe throw them to the ground and not let them get up. Wrestling is hard. It takes all your energy and all your strength, and you can't let up or your opponent will get away, right? So Jacob and this angel wrestled all night long until the angel realized he's not giving up. So when the man saw, verse 25, when the man, the angel, saw that he could not overpower Jacob, he was not going to give up, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched. Your hip is where, you put your arms on your hip when you're mad. Well, that's your hip. And this angel just touched it. And it put Jacob's leg out of socket. From then on, Jacob limped when he walked. It hurt. And the angel had done that just by touching him. Jacob knew this was a special man, a special opponent. Verse 26, the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go." He can't let go. He can't lose his grip on him, even though his hip hurts. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." He knew this was an angel with the ability to give him a blessing. The angel asked, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. The angel said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and you have overcome." God wanted Jacob to have a new name. The name Jacob, remember, means deceiver, trickster. But God was trying to tell him, you're not going to survive this by playing tricks. God wanted Jacob to know, and I think the whole world to know, that his name was now Israel, which means God strives, or you strive with God. It's hard to know exactly what it means because it's an ancient Hebrew name, and I don't speak ancient Hebrew, but Jacob did, and everyone around him did, so they knew what it meant. Jacob was now Israel because he had learned that he wasn't going to accomplish God's will by tricks or by his own power. Just like that little sheep could not get out of his predicament by his own power, he had to realize that he couldn't do it on his own. He had to lay down and wait for that shepherd to come and rescue him. And it seems to me that God was saying the same thing to Jacob and to the whole world. Your name is now Israel. Whenever a name has the letters E-L in it, it has to do with God. So God was the one with the love to save. God was the one with the power to save. God was the one that keeps his promises. He doesn't want people to think that Jacob the deceiver could do it on his own. God wants everyone to know that Israel, God working with Jacob, God accomplished his plan. God keeps his promises. Wow. Well, what do you think happens when Jacob does meet up with Esau? Come back next week and we'll find out.